Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother, Cal, and you're watching Eating W's.
Eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Week 4 recap. Now, a couple of things of news, sadly both injuries before we jump into the recap, but Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins quarterback, will of course be missing next week after his big-time injury against Cincinnati, but we'll hold off on that because we will be talking about that here very soon. And then another really sad one, Javonte Williams will miss the entirety of his sophomore season now with a torn ACL, which just really sucks because I like Javonte Williams. He looked like his career was only going up. So it's a bummer to see an injury like that.
And apparently there was tears to all three ligaments, the PCL and LCL. So he could be out into next season.
That
unfortunately
is such a bummer. You hate to see it. Luckily, medical advances make it so he could very easily come back and be just fine. Look at Adrian Peterson won the MVP in 2012.
He almost came back better.
ACL, so hopefully it's a similar situation for Javonte Williams. But now we will jump into our games, starting with the Thursday night game of Tua and the Miami Dolphins heading to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. And the Bengals picked up a win by a score of 27-15. Now, it was a pretty good game, but of course the huge headline from this game is Tua Tagovailoa will be out probably pretty well indefinitely for right now with a concussion after suffering another huge hit to the head when he got sacked and his head whipped back and hit the turf, same exact way that it did the week before.
And it's quite a coincidence that this one was a concussion, but last week
was a back injury.
I don't get how that made any sense.
Yeah, much questions surrounding the whole back injury 2 weeks ago, but this one most definitely was a concussion. He did the full rigor mortis lockup on the ground. It was bad. It was a very
scary
sad
situation.
So hopefully a speedy recovery for Tua, but for now it is the Teddy Bridgewater show there in Miami.
Yep, and Teddy gets another shot to prove that he could be another starting caliber quarterback. This guy has just stuck around just enough to get shots and get a little bit of playing time each season, it seems.
Just floating around, getting your shots where you can take them. That's what you got to do in the NFL. So Good for Teddy. But overall, a good win by Cincy. Of course, once Teddy came in, it made it a little easier, but he still gave him a run, including a huge bomb touchdown to Tyreek Hill. So Tyreek Hill, man, maybe he just really can do it with anybody.
One thing I noticed is that when Teddy came in, there was no targets to Jalen Waddle. So I don't know if there's just no chemistry there or what it is, but yeah, Waddle's only production came while Tua was still in the game.
I think we'll see that change this week, though, now that Teddy will get some reps with the ones,
Hopefully.
though. So next up, we had the Sunday morning game, the London game of the Vikings and Saints both heading to London to face each other, and the Vikings pick up a win 28-25 on a game-winning field goal by Greg Joseph with about 30 seconds left, and then a game non-tying miss. Game non-tying miss is what we'll call it, I guess, by Will Lutz to end it. But Will Lutz still had a hell of a game. He hit a 60-yarder to tie it earlier and then just barely missed a 61-yarder to tie it again.
It wouldn't be good from 61.
You did count when he hit the 60-yarder count said, I don't know if that would have been good from 61. And he got his chance for the 61 and it was not good.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy that he just barely missed that one. I think that would have been one of the first times that there were two 60-yard field goals in a game.
And
by the same team.
He just barely missed it. In fact, he Cody Parkey style double doinked it off of the left upright and then the crossbar on the bottom. But if you look at all the injuries the Saints had on their roster, they were missing Jameis Winston, Alvin Kamara, Andres Pete, Michael Thomas, and even Marcus May on the defensive side. So they were more than beat up. That is 5 starters, and I'd say borderline star players on that Saints offense that were not in that game. So when you go against a kind of up-and-coming team, I'm still a little nervous about the Vikings, but we're 3-1, so I can't be too nervous. But when you go against a team like the Vikings and still only lose by 3, that is pretty damn impressive, especially considering you had a good chance to tie it there at one point.
Yeah, it was quite a showdown between the two teams. It was kind of a shootout fashion. Just each team would pull ahead, each one would tie, and I think there was, how many ties were there?
Oh, a couple.
Different ties. And
at least two at the end there when it was 22-22 and then 25.
It was a very exciting game for the London fans over there, finally.
Yeah, they finally got a good one. I forgot about that. Yeah. They usually just get all the crappy teams, so they got
maybe the London game is the game of the week now.
Oh, is it going to be flipped around? We'll have to see. But as for the Vikings play, I was okay with it. I still kind of like our play calling and the way we're mixing it up. Our offense just looks flat, which is weird because our offense shouldn't look flat, and our defense most certainly looked not great. But the defense was kind of expected. We're still finding a new identity. So we had some new players, a lot of turnaround on defense. But the offense stayed relatively the same as it was last year. We're just learning that new system still, and we really need to keep picking it up. But nevertheless, we did pick up a win, so you can't complain too much. So I'll take it at the end of the day.
Finally able to get Justin Jefferson more involved, and that really seems to make a difference.
That makes a huge difference. Very true. So next up, we have another NFC North team with the Seahawks heading to Detroit to take on the Lions and picking up a win in the highest scoring game of the NFL season so far, winning 48-45. This game was just an absolute shootout, which when you look at the Seahawks and Lions is mind-blowing, especially considering the Lions were also missing their starting running back in DeAndre Swift and their top 2 receivers in Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Chark. So the Seahawks defense is far from par, but nevertheless, the fact that they were able to put up 45 points is pretty impressive. But the Seahawks put up 48, so at the end of the day, they get the win.
Yeah, it was quite the game there. There was a lot of fireworks, a lot of explosive plays. There was a 50-yard touchdown by Jamal Williams, and then how long was Rashad Penny's?
Rashad Penny had a 40-plus yarder to end it. I'm not sure exactly.
One, so a lot of big plays there for touchdowns, and that really makes a difference. Geno Smith also had 3 touchdowns total by himself.
Yep. TJ Hawkinson also had a huge game with almost 200 yards and either 2 or 3 touchdowns.
I think he had 2 touchdowns.
Just insane fantasy game. If you keep track of fantasy football, if you pretty much had anybody off of either of those offenses, you had a pretty damn good day. So
yes.
Moving on, we got a matchup that included two quarterbacks making their first 2022 start. We had the Jets heading to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers and picking up a win by the score of 24-20. Now, of course, the Jets starting quarterback making their first start was Zach Wilson, coming in off of an injury and having a passing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and about 250 yards. So pretty solid first game back. There was 2 interceptions, but if there's any good things about the Pittsburgh Steelers depth chart, it is the defense. He had to come back and face a pretty good defense, and I'm pretty sure it was in Pittsburgh. So pretty good stats by Wilson. And then the other quarterback making their first start was Kenny Pickett for the Steelers. After they benched Mitchell Trubisky around halftime, I think maybe a little into the third quarter. And then Kenny Pickett came in and had himself, I believe, 2 rushing touchdowns, I want to say, which is ironic. And then 3 interceptions, sadly, but they were kind of like garbage time, not really his fault interceptions, a couple of drops, 1 Hail Mary. So you can't really overly blame him, but it was a pretty entertaining battle between 2 quarterbacks making their first start.
Yeah, PFF actually didn't credit him with any of those interceptions. So technically, or by PFF standards, he had no interceptions and 2 touchdowns. So by their grading system, I'm not exactly sure how they do that, but I could see how, with, like you said, tip passes, the deep ball at the end of the half, or end of the game. So, but yeah, quite a show there by Zach Wilson. I really liked how he performed, and that catch was really nice too.
I was always entertained to see a quarterback catch a touchdown. It's a little annoying though, because all the Steelers fans, I've already heard a couple of them talk about the coming of Kenny Pickett.
Oh.
How it's over now. They have their QB. They got it all.
He is supposed to start
now that he's coming in. So, but overall, the Steelers are now 0-7 without TJ Watt. So they are still looking for that first TJ Wattless win.
Wow.
So we'll see if they can get it next week.
He really is quite the difference maker.
He certainly is. Right, and then finally, a quick one here. We got the Bills going to Baltimore and beating the Ravens by a score of 23-20 in what ended up probably being the game of the week. A game in which the 1 point the Ravens were up, was it 20-3?
20-3,
which is just insane. And then when it was tied 20-20 late in the fourth, the Ravens had a chance to get a field goal to take the lead, but instead went for it on 4th and 2 in the red zone and got shut down, which led to Josh Allen, of course, doing Bills offense and Josh Allen things and driving down the field and scoring the game-winning field goal. So this is now the third time, with it happening twice last year, that the Ravens either went for 2 or went for it on 4th to win a game and got shut down and ended up losing the game because of it. So does Harbaugh shake up his coaching style eventually, or do they stay this aggressive?
I bet they stay that aggressive still. And one thing about it is that they were on the 2-yard line, and actually Lamar Jackson threw an interception, which ended up being a touchback. So they ended up getting it at the 20 instead of at the 2, which makes quite a difference there.
Very much.
That's another 18 plus yards that you would get just by the touchback instead of being backed up in your own end zone. And I don't know, that would have been interesting to see how they would have performed backed up that far instead of getting the touchback.
Yep. Good win by the Bills, and kudos to the Ravens to have the balls to not be once bitten, twice shy, but we'll see if maybe they finally adjusted at some point. And then the final game we're going to talk about for this episode is the Patriots heading to Green Bay to take on the Packers. And the Packers just barely eked out a win, 27-24 in overtime. In fact, in the expiring seconds of overtime.
Yep, it would have been, it was either a win or a tie. Aaron Rodgers probably had one of his worst games, at least probably the worst game of the season so far. That's saying something, even with the Minnesota game, because he really didn't look too good in that game either. But he was just really off on a lot of passes and a lot of deep balls. I don't know. You pointed it out too, that he just seemed to be missing a lot of his targets.
He definitely had a rough game, to say the least.
But when it counted, he was able to methodically get the team down there and drive them down for that game-winning field goal. And, hats off to Bailey Zappi, who came in completely unexpected, basically right at the start of the game, and was able to pull off nearly the upset and really played quite a game.
Yeah, I was almost a big Western Kentucky fan for a second there, with Bailey Zappi leading the game-winning drive. But sadly, for a Vikings fan, it didn't happen. The Packers did end up picking up a win, which it looked sloppy, to say the least. And the Patriots came to play, considering they were missing not only their starting quarterback, but their backup quarterback and their starting wide receiver. But nevertheless, a win's a win. That's all that matters.
Bill Belichick is a hell of a coach. Everybody just kind of assumed this was going to be a big Packers win. When you're facing that good of a coach, it can prove that anything can happen on any Sunday.
Certainly.
I mean, they didn't prepare for Bailey Zappi. They prepared for Brian Hoyer.
Okay, yeah, sure. That's what we'll say. So that was our NFL Week 4 recap. Thank you all so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you liked it. But until next time, don't forget
to eat the W.